Hey guys, tonight we step into the dusty, sun-scorched world of the Assyrian Empire, where the Tigris River glints like a blade under a merciless sky. Picture yourself standing on a crumbling mud brick wall, the air thick with the scent of baked earth and distant smoke. Below, a city hums, merchants haggle, soldiers sharpen spears, and priests mutter to gods you've never heard of. This is Assyria, a place so fierce it carved its name into history's bones. Fair warning, if you were dropped here without a royal title or a really good bribe, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start in Ashur, the beating heart of Assyria's humble beginnings. It's around 2500 BCE, and this isn't an empire yet, just a scrappy city-state huddled along the Tigris. You're walking its narrow streets, dodging donkey carts and squinting at the ziggurat looming like a staircase to the heavens. Ashur's people are traders, toughened by the desert and ambitious enough to dream big. They worship a god named Ashur, too, and his temple smells of incense and ambition. This city's strategic spot on trade routes makes it a magnet for goods. Think cedar wood, lapis lazuli, and enough grain to feed a small army. That's the mainstream fact. Ashur's location fueled its early wealth, setting the stage for empire. But here's a quirky tidbit. Early Assyrians were obsessed with liver omens. Picture a priest slicing open a sheep's liver, poking at its lobes to predict if a trade deal or battle would flop. Sounds like a bad dinner party trick, but they swore by it. Historians still argue whether these divinations actually swayed big decisions or were just ceremonial flexing. Either way, it's a glimpse into a world where guts, literal ones, shaped fates. You're not just sightseeing, though. You feel the pulse of a society on the cusp. Ashur's merchants aren't content with local deals. They're sending caravans to Anatolia, hundreds of miles away, trading tin and textiles for silver. It's risky. Bandits, storms, or a bad liver reading could tank everything. But the payoffs are huge. You overhear traders boasting about profits, their Akkadian chatter, sharp as the daggers at their belts. Jokes on them. No one's invented accounting software yet, so they're scratching tallies on clay tablets. Good luck auditing that. The city's walls, thick and sun-baked, hint at what's coming. Ashur's not just trading, it's arming itself. You spot young men training with spears, their shouts echoing over the river. They're not an empire yet, but the seeds are here. ambition, trade, and a knack for survival. You pause by a potter's stall, watching him shape clay, like Assyria's shaping its future. It's quiet now, but you can almost hear the war drums of centuries to come. That fan's hum in your room. Imagine it's the distant wind, carrying whispers of Asher's rise. You're no longer in quiet Asher. Now you're trudging across a dusty plain, the air sharp with the tang of sweat and metal. It's centuries later, around 900 BCE, and Assyria's war machine is roaring. You're shadowing an Assyrian army, their bronze armor glinting under a brutal sun. The ground trembles as chariots rumble past, each pulled by horses snorting like they know what's coming. This is Assyria's military might, a force so relentless it makes empires tremble. You're close enough to hear the creak of bowstrings and the low growl of soldiers psyching themselves up. Spoiler, you wouldn't want to be on the other side of this. The mainstream fact is undeniable. Assyria built one of the ancient world's first professional armies. Unlike part-time militias, these soldiers trained year-round, paid by the king's coffers. You watch them march in tight formations, spears gleaming like a forest of death. Their tactics are brutal but brilliant. Siege towers to crack city walls, battering rams to smash gates, and a knack for psychological terror. They'd flood enemy fields or parade captives to break morale. You're staring at a war machine that doesn't just win, it dominates. Here's the quirky bit. Assyrian soldiers carried fish-shaped amulets, believing they'd ward off evil spirits in battle. Picture a grizzled warrior, dagger in one hand, fish charm dangling from his belt. Historians still argue whether these talismans were morale boosters or genuine superstition, but it's a reminder even badasses clung to lucky charms. You smirk, imagining a modern soldier taping a rubber duck to their gear for luck. You're at the edge of a siege now, the target city's walls looming like a dare. The Assyrians don't mess around. You see engineers assembling a massive ramp, piling earth to reach the ramparts. Archers loose volleys, arrows hissing like angry wasps. The defenders hurl stones, but it's like swatting a lion. You wince as a ram slams a gate, the thud echoing in your chest. Jokes on the city. Assyria's been practicing this for centuries, and their siege tech is basically the ancient equivalent of a tank. But it's not just muscle. You overhear officers barking orders, coordinating via clay tablets. Yep, the world's first military memos. This army's disciplined, almost mechanical. They've got supply lines stretching hundreds of miles, hauling grain and weapons. You spot a scribe tallying loot, his stylus scratching faster than a Black Friday cashier. It's efficient, but chilling. Assyria's not here to negotiate. They're here to erase resistance. You're starting to get why their enemies whispered about Assyrian cruelty. They didn't just conquer, they terrorized. You hear rumors of flayed captives or cities burned to ash, though the details are murky, propaganda or truth. Either way, it worked. Cities surrendered before the first arrow flew. You're glad you're just a ghost here, slipping past the chaos. That fan's hum back home feels like a lifeline, pulling you from the dust and blood. The army's moving on, leaving the city smoking. You linger, watching vultures circle. Assyria's military wasn't just a tool, it was a statement. They built an empire on fear and precision, and you're starting to see how. Remember those scrappy traders from Asher? Their descendants turned ambition into a blade, and it's cutting through history. You've left the battlefield's dust behind, and now you're wandering the bustling streets of Nineveh, Assyria's dazzling capital, around 700 BCE. The air hums with the scent of cedar and the chatter of scribes. You're here to explore the empire's cultural flourish, a side of Assyria that's less about swords and more about stories carved in stone. Picture yourself ducking into a palace courtyard where artisans chisel reliefs of lion hunts and poets murmur tales of gods. This is Assyria at its creative peak, proving they weren't just brutes, they were brilliant. The mainstream fact is that Assyria produced some of the ancient world's finest art and literature. You're gazing at massive stone reliefs in a royal palace, each scene a snapshot of power kings slaying beasts, armies crushing foes. These aren't just decor, they're propaganda, shouting Assyrian dominance. But the real gem is the Library of Ashurbanipal, a collection of 30,000 clay tablets holding epic poems, medical texts, and star charts. You imagine scribes copying the Epic of Gilgamesh, their styluses dancing over clay. This library's a big deal. Scholars call it the world's first. Here's the quirky tidbit. Assyrian artists loved sneaking tiny details into their work, like a dog chewing a bone in the corner of a war scene. You spot one on a relief, and it's oddly charming, like finding an Easter egg in a video game. Historians still argue whether these details were artistic flair or coded messages, but they make you grin. Who knew conquerors had a soft spot for doodles? You're strolling past a sculptor's workshop now, the clink of chisels mixing with street vendors' shouts. The sculptor's carving a lamassu, a winged bull with a human face, meant to guard the palace. It's massive, and you're half convinced it's watching you. Jokes on you if you trip its magical alarm. You're toast, or at least that's what the locals believe. These statues aren't just art, they're spiritual bouncers, blending beauty with a dash of fear. The literary scene's just as vibrant. You slip into a scribe's school where boys scratch cuneiform into soft clay, learning myths and math. One kid's tablet has a love poem, and you catch the gist. Your eyes are sweeter than honey. Cheesy, but it's proof. Assyrians had hearts, not just spears. The library's nearby, and you wish you could browse its tablets. Imagine the Yelp reviews on ancient potions. But it's not all highbrow. You hear a street bard spinning a raunchy tale about a trickster god, and the crowd's eating it up. This cultural boom wasn't accidental. Kings like Ashurbanipal poured wealth into art to flex their sophistication. You see it in the palace's glazed tiles, shimmering blue and gold like a desert mirage. But it's not perfect. Slaves likely hauled those stones, a dark shadow on the sparkle. You're starting to see Assyria's duality, genius and grit, beauty and blood. That fan's hum in your room feels like a soft reminder of home, grounding you as you weave through this vibrant, complicated world. Remember those fish amulets from the battlefield? The same soldiers who wore them guarded these artists, linking war to culture. Assyria's legacy isn't just conquest. It's this creative pulse beating through time. You pause by a relief of a banquet, wine cups raised. For a moment, you're tempted to join the party. You're standing in the shadow of a colossal palace in Nineveh, its gates flanked by those eerie Lamassu statues you saw being carved. The air's thick with the scent of myrrh and ambition. It's around 700 BCE, and you're here to meet the kings who shaped Assyria with iron fists and larger-than-life egos. These aren't just rulers. They're the architects of an empire that rewrote the ancient world's rules. You're close enough to hear the rustle of royal robes and the sharp commands of courtiers. Buckle up. This is where history gets personal. The mainstream fact is that Assyrian kings, like Tiglath-Pileser III and Ashurbanipal, were master strategists, centralizing power and expanding the empire to its zenith. You're watching Tiglath-Pileser III, a game changer who ruled around 745 BCE. He's not just a warrior, he's a reformer, turning a patchwork of cities into a tight-knit empire. You see him inspecting troops, his beard braided like a status symbol. His big move, creating a standing army and deporting conquered peoples to mixed populations, crushing rebellion. It's harsh but effective. Think of it as ancient social engineering. Here's the quirky tidbit. Assyrian kings loved boasting about their zoo collections. Ashurbanipal bragged about caging lions and exotic birds, a flex of wealth and control over nature. You peek into a palace garden, spotting a leopard pacing in a pen. Historians still argue whether these menageries were for prestige or propaganda, but you're just glad you're not cleaning the cages. Jokes on the zookeepers. No one's invented tranquilizer darts yet. You're trailing a royal procession now, the king's chariot gleaming with gold. The crowd bows, but you catch whispers of fear. Nobody crosses these guys. Tiglath-Pileser's successors, like Sargon-Sintin, kept the momentum. Sargon's palace at Dur-Sharrukin is a marvel, with walls boasting his conquests. You read one inscription claiming he crushed a city like a clay pot. Subtle, right? These kings didn't just rule, they performed power, staging grand hunts or feasts to dazzle subjects. You're at one now, dodging servants with trays of roasted gazelle. The king's throne is carved with gods, a not-so-gentle reminder he's divine, or so he claims. But it's not all swagger. You slip into a council chamber where the king hears reports from governors. He's sharp, grilling them on taxes and troop numbers. This is where the empire's gears turn. Kings demanded loyalty, enforced by spies and swift punishment. You shudder, imagining the paperwork. Even emperors couldn't escape bureaucracy. Another joke: if you think your boss is tough, try forgetting to send the king his tribute. Spoiler, you won't get a second chance. The king's personal lives fascinate you. Ashurbanipal, the scholar king, loved his library, but wasn't above flaying rebels. You hear courtiers gossip about his queen, who hosted lavish banquets. It's a soap opera with stakes, lose favor, and you're exiled or worse. These rulers balanced charisma and cruelty, and it worked. Their ambition stretched Assyria from Egypt to Persia, a feat that awes you as you trace their map on a palace wall. Remember those library tablets from Nineveh? Ashurbanipal's obsession with knowledge came from this royal drive to be the best. But you're starting to see cracks. Arrogance breeds enemies. For now, the king's word is law, and you're just a guest in his world. That fan's hum back home soothes you, a whisper of safety amid this royal storm. You're weaving through the crowded streets of Kalhu, another of Assyria's grand capitals, around 850 BCE. The air buzzes with the clatter of carts and the sharp tang of olive oil from a nearby market. You're here to uncover the empire's innovative governance, the nuts and bolts that held this sprawling beast together. Forget the pomp of palaces. This is about the systems, ingenious, ruthless, and way ahead of their time, that kept millions in line. You're dodging scribes clutching clay tablets, their faces tense with the weight of bureaucracy. This is Assyria's brain at work, and it's mesmerizing. The mainstream fact is that Assyria pioneered one of the ancient world's first centralized administrative systems. You're shadowing a governor as he inspects a granary, his aides tallying grain on tablets. The empire was split into provinces, each run by a loyal governor reporting directly to the king. This wasn't a loose confederation. It was a machine with tax collectors, road networks, and a postal system using relay stations to speed messages across hundreds of miles. You're impressed. Assyria's running a proto-empire with the efficiency of a modern corporation, minus the coffee breaks. Here's the quirky tidbit. Assyrian bureaucrats used curse tablets to seal contracts, invoking gods to smite anyone who broke the deal. You spot one in a scribe's satchel, etched with threats of divine boils. Historians still argue whether these were legal scare tactics or genuine belief, but you're just glad your lease agreement didn't come with a plague clause. Jokes on the cheaters. Try dodging a god's wrath when your name's literally cursed in cuneiform. You're at a provincial office now, a mud brick building humming with activity. Scribes are everywhere, scratching reports on everything from crop yields to rebel sightings. The king's spies, yes, they had those, kept tabs on local loyalty, and you overhear a nervous official whispering about a missed tribute. The system's tight taxes flowed to Nineveh, funding armies and palaces, while royal decrees flowed back, enforced by garrisons. You're starting to get why Assyria lasted centuries. They didn't just conquer, they managed. But it's not all smooth. You notice a line of deportees, families shuffled from conquered lands to work Assyrian fields. This was Tiglath-Pileser's brainchild, mixing populations to dilute rebellion. It's cold but clever, and you see it working. A Babylonian potter now crafts for Assyrian lords, his accent fading. Still, you feel the human cost. Uprooted lives, lost homes. Another joke if you think moving cross-country is rough. Try doing it with an Assyrian soldier prodding you. No moving vans here. The roads are another marvel. You're walking one now, paved for chariots and lined with rest stops. Messengers sprint past, carrying sealed tablets. It's like an ancient pony express, and it kept the king's grip firm. You're tempted to hitch a ride, but the glares from armed guards change your mind. The system's genius lies in its scale. Assyria ruled from Egypt to Iran, and somehow it worked. Well, mostly. You hear grumbles about heavy taxes, a hint of trouble brewing. Remember those boastful kings from the palace. Their zoos and armies relied on this governance. Without it, Assyria's just a loud guy with a crown. You pause by a canal, its water diverted to feed fields. A governor's pet project. The empire's humming, but you sense its weight. That fan's hum in your room feels like a gentle pull, tethering you as you navigate this web of power. You're standing before a towering ziggurat in Nineveh, its steps climbing toward a sky streaked with dusk. The air carries the heavy scent of burning incense and the faint chant of priests. It's around 700 BCE, and you're diving into Assyria's religious zeal. The spiritual pulse that drove their conquests and colored their world. This isn't just about gods. It's about a society that saw divine will in every storm and victory. You're close enough to feel the heat of a sacrificial brazier, its flames licking at offerings. This is Assyria's soul laid bare, and it's intense. The mainstream fact is that religion was central to Assyrian life, with the god Ashur as the empire's patron. You're watching a priest in a fringed robe pour oil on an altar, invoking Ashur to bless the king's latest campaign. Temples were power hubs, bankrolled by royal wealth, and their rituals, think animal sacrifices and star readings, guided everything from war to farming. Ashur wasn't just a deity, he was the empire's brand, his name stamped on every conquest. You're struck by the ziggurat scale, a literal stairway to divine favor. Here's the quirky tidbit. Assyrians believed demons caused eclipses, and they'd swap the king for a fake one during these events to trick the evil spirits. Picture a random farmer crowned for a day, probably thrilled until he realized he might not survive the gig. Historians still argue whether these substitute kings were ceremonial or actually risked their necks, but you're just glad you're not volunteering. Jokes on the demons. Assyria's priests were basically ancient PR spin doctors. You're slipping into a temple now, its walls painted with winged gods and snarling lions. The crowd's hushed, watching a ritual to appease Ishtar, goddess of love and war. A priestess chants, her voice hypnotic, while doves are released. Cute, until you spot the bloodstains from yesterday's bull sacrifice. Religion here isn't abstract, it's visceral, tying the king to the cosmos. You hear a noblewoman pray for her son's safe return from battle, her desperation raw. It's a reminder gods mattered because life was fragile. The priests are also scholars, tracking stars to predict harvests or rebellions. You peek at an astrolabe, its markings mapping the heavens. This blend of faith and science fascinates you. Assyrians didn't just pray, they analyzed. But it's not all divine harmony. You catch whispers of rival cults, like devotees of Marduk in conquered Babylon, clashing with Ashur's supremacy. Religion unified Assyria, but also sowed tension. Another joke try telling an Assyrian priest his god's not top dog. Spoiler, you'll need a fast chariot. The king's role as high priest adds another layer. You see him draped in gold, leading a festival for the new year. It's theater, cementing his divine right to rule. The crowd cheers, but you sense fear. Displease the gods, and the empire could crumble. You're starting to get why every victory was credited to Ashur. It wasn't just faith, it was politics. The temple's incense swirls, and you feel the weight of a world where heaven and earth were one. Remember those cursed tablets from the governor's offices? They're rooted in this spiritual fervor, binding oaths to gods. Assyria's religion wasn't a side note. It was the glue holding the empire's ambitions together. You linger by the ziggurat, its shadow cool against the heat. That fan's hum in your room feels like a soft echo of the priest's chants, grounding you as you navigate this divine drama. You're weaving through a bustling marketplace in Assur, the Tigris River glimmering nearby under a noon sun. The air's alive with the scent of spices, leather, and the sharp tang of freshly minted silver. It's around 800 BCE, and you're here to trace the economic power that fueled Assyria's rise, a web of trade and tribute that stretched from mountains to seas. This isn't just about coins, it's about the wealth that built palaces and armies. You're dodging merchants haggling over cedar logs, their voices sharp as the daggers at their waists. This is Assyria's wallet, and it's bursting. The mainstream fact is that Assyria's economy thrived on a sophisticated trade network and tribute system. You're watching a caravan unload goods. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, tin from Anatolia, and Egyptian linen so fine it shimmers. The empire's roads, those same ones you walked with messengers, linked markets from Persia to the Mediterranean. Conquered cities paid heavy tribute: gold, grain, horses, funneled to capitals like Nineveh. You see a royal official weighing silver shekels, his scales glinting. This wealth wasn't just power, it was the empire's lifeblood, funding everything from ziggurats to siege towers. Here's the quirky tidbit: Assyrians used barley as a backup currency when silver was scarce. Picture a farmer bartering sacks of grain for a bronze pot, like trading lattes for Wi-Fi in a pinch. Historians still argue whether this was a formal system or just practical improvisation, but you're amused imagining a noble lugging barley to pay taxes. Joke's on him. Try fitting that in a wallet. You're at the riverbank now, where boats unload amphorae of wine and bales of wool. Assyria's trade wasn't just local. They were middlemen in a global economy, connecting Mesopotamia to distant lands. You overhear a merchant boasting about his caravan's haul from Dilmun, a Gulf island dripping with pearls. The empire's reach awes you. They taxed trade routes like ancient toll booths, and the cash rolled in. But it's not all rosy. You spot a weary laborer hauling goods, likely a deportee from a conquered land. The wealth's dazzling, but it's built on subjugation. The tribute system's even more intense. You slip into a treasury, its vaults stuffed with looted statues and ivory. Kings demanded annual payments from vassal states, and woe to those who skimped. You hear a scribe read a tablet listing Urartu's overdue tribute. Spoiler, their city's now ash. This wasn't just economics, it was domination, with wealth as a weapon. Another joke, forget Black Friday. Try dodging an Assyrian tax collector. They didn't do discounts. You're starting to see the scale. Royal accountants tracked every shekel. Their clay ledgers, a nerd's dream. The empire's canals, diverting rivers to fields, boosted harvests, feeding cities and armies. You pause by a stall selling saffron. Its price absurd. Some things never change. The market's chaos feels alive, but you sense fragility. Heavy taxes and forced tribute bred resentment, a slow poison. Assyria's wealth was mighty, but it made enemies. Remember those priests chanting for Asher's favor. Their temples were bankrolled by this economy, tying gold to gods. The empire's trade and tribute weren't just practical. They were a flex, shouting Assyria's dominance. You linger by the river, watching boats glide. That fan's hum in your room feels like a soft current, tethering you as you navigate this glittering, ruthless world. You're threading through a dusty alley in Kalhu, the sun baking the mud brick walls around you. It's around 750 BCE, and the air hums with the clatter of looms, the cries of children, and the low murmur of a noble's litter passing by. You're here to navigate the lives of Assyria's diverse classes, from the elite sipping wine in palaces to the laborers hauling stones for their glory. This is the empire's social strata, a ladder of power and struggle that shaped daily life. You're close enough to smell the sweat of workers and the perfume of the wealthy, and it's a stark contrast. The mainstream fact is that Assyrian society was rigidly hierarchical, with the king and nobles at the top, followed by priests, merchants, artisans, farmers, and slaves. You're watching a noblewoman, her robes dyed Tyrian purple, inspect a market stall while her guards scowl at passers-by. The king's court, dripping with wealth, set the tone. Land grants and titles kept elites loyal. Below them, artisans like potters and scribes had steady work, but farmers and laborers, often deportees, toiled for scraps. Slaves, usually war captives, were the lowest rung, their lives expendable. You see this structure everywhere, from palace feasts to field gangs. Here's the quirky tidbit. Assyrian nobles wore fish-shaped perfume bottles, dangling from their belts like ancient cologne keychains. You spot one glinting on a courtier's sash, and it's oddly endearing. Imagine a warlord spritzing himself mid-battle. Historians still argue whether these were status symbols or just practical, but you're chuckling at the thought of a tough guy fussing over his scent. Joke's on him, no amount of myrrh covers the smell of chariot dust. You're at a work site now, where laborers haul limestone for a new temple. Most are deportees, their accents a mix of Aramaic and Elamite, eyes dull with exhaustion. Above them, a scribe records their quotas, his tablet a cold tally of human effort. You feel the divide. While workers sweat, merchants in the market haggle over ivory, and priests in the ziggurat pray for royal favor. The middle class, if you can call it that, fascinates you. You slip into a scribe's home, modest but tidy, his family sharing barley stew. He's proud, teaching his son cuneiform, but you sense the pressure, miss a deadline, and the palace doesn't care. The elite's world is another story. You sneak into a banquet where nobles recline on couches, sipping date wine. A harpist plays, and the talk's all about conquests and tribute. A woman, likely a king's sister, commands the room, her jewelry clinking. But even here, there's tension. Court intrigue could ruin anyone. You're glad you're just a ghost, slipping past the drama. Another joke: try cutting in line at an Assyrian feast. Spoiler: you'll be cleaning stables by dawn. The lowest classes haunt you. You see a slave girl, maybe 12, carrying water. Her story's lost, but her labor built this empire. Deportation mixed cultures, Babylonians, Israelites, or Artians, but erased identities. You're starting to get Assyria's paradox, a vibrant society, but one that thrived on inequality. The hierarchy worked, keeping order, but it bred resentment, a spark for future rebellion. Remember those trade routes, buzzing with wealth? They relied on these classes, merchants to trade, laborers to build, slaves to serve. The empire's strength was its people, but its cruelty to them was a flaw. You pause by a weaver's stall, her hands deft despite her weary eyes. That fan's hum in your room feels like a soft anchor, steadying you in this layered, unequal world. You're standing on a crumbling watchtower, overlooking Nineveh, the once mighty capital, as storm clouds gather over the Tigris. It's around 612 BCE, and the air feels heavy with dust and dread. You're here to witness the decline's shadow, the slow unraveling of Assyria's brutal yet brilliant empire. The streets below are quieter now, fewer merchants, more whispered rumors of invaders. You're close enough to hear the clank of a soldier's armor and the nervous prayers of a priest. This is Assyria teetering, and the fall is coming fast. The mainstream fact is that Assyria collapsed under the combined pressure of internal strife and external enemies. You're watching a city on edge. Years of heavy taxes and forced deportations have soured the provinces, while the royal court drowns in succession disputes. The Medes and Babylonians, once vassals, are now allies, their armies circling like vultures. Historical records pinpoint the sack of Nineveh in 612 BCE as the death blow, when coalition forces breached the walls, leaving the city in flames. You can almost smell the smoke on the wind. Here's the quirky tidbit. During Nineveh's final days, some priests reportedly tried to save the city by sacrificing donkeys, believing their blood would appease the gods. You spot a ritual site, the ground stained, and it's both bizarre and desperate. Historians still argue whether these acts were widespread or just the frantic moves of a crumbling elite, but you're just glad you're not mopping up. Jokes on the priests, no amount of donkey blood could stop a siege tower. You're walking the city's defenses now, the walls scarred from earlier raids. Soldiers patrol, but their eyes betray fear. Morale's crumbling. The empire's overreach is clear, conquering Egypt, and Elam stretched resources thin, and rebellions kept flaring. You overhear a merchant grumbling about empty trade routes, his caravan looted by bandits who no longer fear Assyrian might. The economy's faltering, and with it, the glue that held the provinces together. It's a slow bleed, but deadly. The court's chaos doesn't help. You slip into a palace, its halls dimmer than the glittering banquets you saw before. The king, maybe Sin-Shar-Ishkun, is absent, likely rallying troops. Courtiers whisper of betrayals, some nobles defecting to the enemy. You sense the weight of a system that relied on fear. Once the fear fades, so does control. Another joke: try holding an empire together when your governors are sending "Sorry, I'm out" letters to the Medes. The attackers are close now. You hear distant war drums, a low thrum that chills you. The coalition's no ragtag band. They've studied Assyrian tactics, turning the empire's own playbook against it. You climb a rampart, spotting campfires on the horizon. Nineveh's canals, once a boast of engineering, now aid the enemy, guiding their approach. You're starting to see why empires fall. Brilliance breeds arrogance, and Assyria's made too many enemies. Remember those proud kings and their zoos? Their ambition built this, but also broke it. The people, laborers, scribes, even nobles, feel the strain. You pause by a temple, its altar cold, prayers unanswered. The empire's gods seem silent, and the city's pulse is fading. That fan's hum in your room feels like a steady breath, anchoring you as you watch this giant stumble, its shadow shrinking under the coming storm. You're standing on a quiet hill, the ruins of Nineveh sprawling below, half buried in dust and time. It's centuries past the empire's fall, maybe 500 BCE, and the Tigris flows gently, indifferent to the glory it once fed. You're here to reflect on Assyria's enduring legacy, the echoes of a brutal yet brilliant empire that reshaped history, the air's soft, carrying the scent of dry earth and wild herbs. You're alone, tracing the faint outlines of a lost world, but its impact lingers like a whisper in your bones. This is where Assyria's story settles, and it's profound. The mainstream fact is that Assyria's innovations, military tactics, governance, and cultural achievements left a blueprint for future empires. You're picturing their professional army, those disciplined ranks you saw in action, influencing Persian and Roman legions. Their administrative genius, with governors and relay posts, became a model for centralized rule. Even their library, Ashurbanipal's pride, preserved knowledge that reached Greek scholars. You're struck by how Assyria's systems, roads, taxes, deportations, set standards for control, echoed in empires as late as Rome. Their mark is undeniable, etched into history's framework. Here's the quirky tidbit. Assyrian winged bull statues inspired later art, popping up in Persian palaces and even modern museum logos. You imagine a Lamassu's stern face on a coffee mug, a quirky nod to their grandeur. Historians still argue whether these symbols carried spiritual weight for later cultures or were just aesthetic flexes. But you love the idea of an ancient bull going viral. Jokes on us. We're still obsessed with their style, just without the divine baggage. You're wandering the ghost of Nineveh now. Its walls crumbled, but its lessons sharp. Assyria taught the world how to scale power, how to govern vast lands, move armies, and project fear. But you see the flip side, their cruelty. The flayed captives and crushed cities set a grim precedent. Empires like Babylon and Persia learned from both the brilliance and the brutality. You pause by a shattered relief, a king's face chipped away. It's humbling. Assyria's ambition burned bright, but overreach and enemies snuffed it out. Their cultural gifts linger too. You recall the Epic of Gilgamesh, its verses still read today, a thread from their scribes to your bookshelf. Their art, those vivid reliefs of hunts and battles, shape storytelling in stone. Even their star charts nudged astronomy forward. You're starting to get it. Assyria wasn't just a moment. It was a foundation. But the cost, those deportees, the taxed provinces, reminds you progress often rides on suffering. Another joke try pitching Assyrian efficiency to a modern HR team. They'd love the relay posts, hate the flaying. The debate lingers. Did Assyria's legacy empower or curse the empires that followed? You feel the tension, genius and terror intertwined. Their roads carried trade, but also armies. Their laws brought order, but crushed descent. You sit on a broken column, the wind soft. Assyria's gone, but its shadow stretches through history books, museum halls, even the way we organize power. Remember that ziggurat, its steps to the gods. Its ambition lives in every skyline, every system that dares to scale. As the sun dips, the ruins glow gold, and your thoughts slow. You're safe in your room, that fans hum a gentle lullaby. Assyria's story fades like a dream, its triumphs and tragedies softening. Let the Tigris carry them away, flowing through time. You're drifting now, wrapped in the calm of history's embrace. The empire's dust settles, and so do you, easing into sleep's quiet tide. Sweet dreams, traveler. Tonight, you walked with giants. You're lying back now, the ruins of Nineveh dissolving into a warm, hazy glow. The Tigris whispers in your mind, its waters lapping gently, carrying away the weight of empires. You feel the soft earth beneath you, cradling your thoughts as the stars above twinkle like distant memories. Assyria's gone, its kings, its armies, its gods, but you're here, safe, wrapped in the present. The fan's hum is your anchor, a steady breath that soothes your drifting mind. Let the dust of history settle. There's no need to chase it. You've walked through time tonight, seen brilliance and shadow, and now it's time to rest. Picture a quiet riverbank, the air cool, the world still. Your eyelids grow heavy, each blink slower, softer. The past can wait, tomorrow's another story. For now, sink into the calm. Let your dreams be gentle, and know you're exactly where you need to be. Sleep well, traveler.